Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Married at First Sight. Let's get to the show.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying. Despite all of our differences, I'm really trying. So.
No. We're here for that, so, yeah.
But I'm like, woosah myself. Let me... woosah. I woosah myself, and I'm like, let me put my energy into it. So I'll...
Katie.
No.
Are you okay?
So I didn't show the clips leading up to this moment. For Katie, she has been increasingly jealous, essentially, that Derek has been very openly communicating with other women at this retreat. And she feels hurt by that. So just filling you in.
No.
I think you should. It's your turn.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Maybe we should clean up the table.
Yeah, I'm done eating.
Yeah, let's clean up. I think we're done.
Yeah.
You should drink, though.
Katie, would you like to talk at all? What's going on? Like, seriously, talk to me. What's going on?
It's super annoying to see how you act with other people.
So there are a lot of factors playing into what's happening right here that I want to comment on. One is alcohol. When you drink alcohol, you're less inhibited, you're less noticing of other people's feelings, and so Derek may be being more hurtful in a way that he wouldn't be normally if he wasn't drinking. For Katie, I don't know if she's drinking. It looks like she was drinking water, but if she was drinking, it's possible that when Katie's drinking, and because it's common for a lot of people, that as we drink, our ability to think straight actually becomes hindered and compromised. That's usually why people drink, because they want to forget about their feelings, or they want to not be anxious, or they want to just relax, these kinds of things. They want the euphoria that comes from alcohol. There's a lot of different effects from alcohol. But anyway, one of the side effects that isn't quite so enjoyable is the fact that the concert, one way to think about our brain is that it's an orchestra. And you have, the flute section and the clarinet section and the trumpet section and the trombones and the oboes and the saxophones and, and the timpani and the triangle person. And the conductor is various different functions of the brain, including the executive function, which is close to the front of our head. And so it's a metaphor. It's not a great metaphor, but it is a somewhat useful metaphor in that when we're sober, the concert, the orchestra is all in sync. Everyone is communicating. Everyone is on their best behavior. The violins are listening to the violas, and the violas are listening to the and the trombone, and the conductor. Everyone's paying attention. It's working well. Well, when we drink alcohol, the communication and the certain sections start to become dysfunctional. The violins start to play a little off key. The conductor starts to slow down and then speeds up, and then the conductor wanders off of the podium and comes back every once in a while. The drummers are offbeat, and everything gets messed up in a certain way. And thus, our ability to think through our emotions and our ability to rationalize our emotions becomes extremely compromised. So it's possible that for Katie right now, she's watching Derek be very bubbly and communicative with these other women. I wouldn't characterize Derek as flirting by any stretch. He is communicating and just being friendly, because I think that's how he sees himself. I think he sees himself as kind of the life of the party. And so for Katie, she's watching this, and if she were sober, she might look at it and say, well, this is a little hurtful, but he's just being the life of the party, and the fact that I don't feel very close to him shouldn't really influence my perception of what's happening right now. Whereas when you're intoxicated and the orchestra isn't working quite well, it's possible that Katie looks at the situation and sees it as an absolute threat to her marriage, that he is being communicative and friendly with these other women. And it instantly becomes this downward spiral of hurt and shame and anger, and then her emotions start to rise of anger and frustration. And if she were sober, she'd be able to oh, I'm really angry right now. I I got to relax. I got to go to the bathroom, look myself in the mirror, tell myself everything's going to be okay, because there's not really any sense in creating a scene at this party right now. But because she's intoxicated, maybe, and I don't know if she even is intoxicated, that she doesn't have that ability to reflect on her emotions and really think through it. Now, I will say that Katie has every right to be hurt in this moment. Her status with her relationship with Derek is very much in question. He has stated he's not in love with her. And they were talking in other clips that I didn't show that Katie feels very hurt that he doesn't initiate anything. He doesn't initiate sex. He doesn't initiate romance. He doesn't initiate conversations. He is very much sort of on the outside of the relationship, and Katie is trying to pull him in. And Katie is in love with him, and Katie does want to have sex with him, and Katie does want to do a lot of things with him. It almost comes across like Derek is agreeing to be a good husband, whereas Katie is a good wife, if that makes any sense. Derek is like, okay, fine, I'll go along with this. And he's a very easygoing guy, but, it doesn't come across to Katie like Derek really loves her and really cares for her. Now, Derek has been honest about this the whole time. He's never deceived. And so Derek isn't being a bad person by pointing this out, because his feelings are his feelings. But it would be very hurtful to be in Katie's shoes and to be married to someone that isn't in love with you and to be waiting for them to fall in love with you. And Katie's been very patient, and she's been, for the most part, I think, very healthy as she's been navigating that. So she's sitting there in the party, and she's watching him communicate with these other women, and it's upsetting to her. It's touching on that worry that she's not good enough, or the marriage is not going to work out, or whatever it is that it's hurting in her. And she has a rise in emotion, and then she has to get out of the room. But she wants to communicate as she's leaving that she's upset at Derek, because she didn't say, oh, my stomach's hurting. She didn't make an excuse. She in the middle of a conversation, just stood up, very clear message to everyone in the room that she was angry and she wanted someone to follow her. And that's not like the best way to deal with one's conflict, but, it worked. It got Derek to follow her, and now they're going to engage in a conversation. Usually, they're able to work this out. Katie is a therapist and usually can exhibit differentiated behavior, so let's see how they do here.
Do you think I'm flirting with Taylor?
The fact that you come in here and you already know.
Do you think I'm being overly friendly? I'm not intending to.
Derek? So we're sitting in there, and you're like great around other people, right? Like you're great. Mm-hmm. And the way you treat Taylor and Mika and Jessica.
Because they're going through a tough time with
Can I finish?
Well,
Okay, so it's not a great behavior for Derek to interrupt and be defensive, which is not the best thing to do in that situation. What am I looking for? If Derek wants to help the situation, it would be to listen, because she's upset. And even though some of the things you might have problems with, it's like, well, let's keep our opinions to ourselves until she's done, and you can validate her feelings, and then you can bring up your ideas. If it's one thing you ever learn from me, it is this: when your spouse or anyone is expressing anger towards you, or frustration with you, or hurt or something, and it's one of those conversations, you've all been in them, as they're talking to you, you are starting to catalog, oh, they're wrong about that, that doesn't make any sense, that I have a good point against that, I have all these counter points to what they're saying. Do not say them. You can think them, like maybe write them down on a pad of paper, catalog them. There's no emergency. You don't have to counter what they're saying in the moment. Just wait until they finish and you validate what they're saying. You don't have to agree with what they're saying, but you validate, you hear them. So Katie is saying, you're being very friendly, and it's clear that you're flirting with Taylor. So for Derek, he's like, what? In his mind, he's like, I'm not flirting with Taylor. That's ridiculous. I'm just being my normal extroverted self. People kind of depend on me to be that in the room. If I don't do that, I feel weird. Or maybe he was flirting with Taylor. I don't know. But the point is that he's thinking, I'm not flirting with Taylor. And what he should have done is he should have said, okay, well, Katie is wrong about that I was flirting with Taylor. And that is a horrible accusation. But I'm going to wait because I can be defensive later. I can make all my points later. Step 1 is listen. Step 2 is validate. Okay, honey, what I'm hearing you say is that you think that I was flirting with Taylor, and it sounds like you're hurt. Is that what I'm hearing? And then maybe Katie continues to talk, okay, because she's got more to get off her chest. Okay, you listen, and you continue. You just keep validating, keep listening, keep hearing, and making sure that she understands that you've heard it, okay? After enough of that has been done, then you can say, so I hear you, and I'm sorry that, I was doing things that was hurting your feelings. I just want to clear something up. From my heart, I was not flirting with Taylor. I could see how my behavior might come across like it's flirting because, I'm sort of nice to everyone. And maybe I was talking more so to Taylor because maybe I feel like Taylor and I have things in common, but I'm not attracted to Taylor. I don't want to be with her. I want to be with you. So that would probably lead to a better result. Instead, and I'll rewind this, Derek jumps on it and says, right away he tries to defend himself without listening, demonstrating your listening, and without validating. Without those things, then we get Katie's reaction, which is because she's already at a heightened level of anger. When you're jealous and you storm out of a room, your stress hormones, your emotions are high. And so she doesn't exhibit that very overtly, but it's undoubtable in my mind. And so you can't make counterpoints when someone is that elevated. You have to get them calmed down before you can begin to, present any counterpoints. And the way to get people to calm down is to demonstrate your listening and to validate them. When you do that, people calm down, and then they can be rational. I wish police officers did this more often. Some of them are actually trained to do this sort of thing. You come up on someone and you are saying, hey, I need you to, put your hands behind your back or something. And the suspect is saying something like, I don't know, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong. Well, a way to escalate the situation and say, I said, put your hands behind your back. A way to de-escalate is say, sir, I understand that you believe you didn't do anything wrong. I hear you. I still need you to put your hands behind your back. So you validate, you hear, because when people are upset and they're trying to communicate something to you and you indicate you don't hear them, they just escalate their emotions. They just get worse. So if someone's escalated and they're trying to communicate something to you and you demonstrate you're not listening, it's just going to make them more upset. Katie's central hurt right now is she feels rejected. If you reject her notions right now, it's going to make her feel more rejected and more upset. Having said all that, Katie's reaction to this was uncalled for. She is escalating very, very sharply, and I don't think it calls for that. So if you're elevated, take a breath. If you want to start barking and yelling and swearing, that is, that's not functional behavior, I will say. Because one, it's very hurtful. And two, for the Dereks of the world, so here's my perception. She's mounting in her stress during that party as everyone is talking. She's getting more and more hurt. Derek he's at, so she's at like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Derek's at a 0. He's not stressed at all. Katie, runs out of the room. Now Derek's at like a 2. He's like, oh, I'm a little stressed, but I don't know what's going on. So Derek follows her, and he's mostly differentiated at this point. He sits down to talk with her. He doesn't exhibit, good listening, and he exhibits defensiveness. Now Katie's up to an 8. And now Katie's yelling at him and being verbally abusive. And now Derek's going to go up because now he's hurt. Now he feels like, wait a second. So just because I was socializing with friends, now I'm a terrible person and I deserve to be yelled at, that doesn't make any sense. Now Derek goes up, and as Derek goes up and he tries to communicate that, Katie's not going to hear that, and they're just going to escalate up, and the situation just spins out of control. A huge chunk of my couples therapy behavior or activity has to do with this, stopping people from escalating up. A lot of couples will do the upward spiral of conflict, and it changes their narrative of the other person. That you do this enough times, your narrative of your partner is, I'm married to a terrible person. I'm married to a defensive, angry, unloving, narcissistic, gaslighting. I hear all these terms, but it's just a result of mutual escalation, usually. And with education, getting to know your attachment injuries, getting to know your past healing that you need to heal from, getting to know the proper steps of communication, you can eliminate those upward spirals so that you don't have them, and your conflicts are kept below a certain level, even functionally. And you end up falling in love more, you have less contempt, things last longer. It's all laid out in research. Anyway, so I'm going to rewind it and let's just watch this series again.
The fact that you come in here and you already know.
Do you think I'm being overly friendly? I'm not intending to.
Derek. So we're sitting in there and you're like great around other people, right? Like you're great. And the way you treat Taylor and Nika and Jessica.
Because they're going through a tough time with
Can I f***ing finish?
So there it is. And the sound editors add that boo, to emphasize that Katie just dropped a bomb. So I usually see pretty differentiated behavior from these two. I wonder if alcohol is a factor in this, or I wonder if Katie and her feelings of hurt and rejection are mounting. So maybe this is headed in a bad direction. Usually they can manage this, but maybe this is when things completely fly off the handle. We'll watch.
Well, okay, sure.
Did you want to know or did you not want to know? Did you come in here to talk or did you come in here to
I want to
listen?
know. I don't want you to yell at me, but I want to know.
Okay, good. Excellent behavior from Derek and from Katie. Katie she kind of reeled it back and she says, do you want to know? Do you want to listen? And Derek is like calmly, yes, I do want to know. I don't want to be yelled at, but I do want to know. Please tell me. So Derek is now realizing, maybe I need to not be defensive and I need to listen a little bit more. Maybe she's more upset than I realized. So maybe they'll get back to functional communication here. Let's see.
The way you talk to me and treat me is not any different from the way you treat every other girl here. So do I feel special as your wife? No. Not at all.
Okay.
You don't make any initiative, like physically.
Okay, so she started off pretty well there, that she's saying, I don't feel special in comparison to the way you treat any woman. And a more sort of differentiated statement would be to say, I feel like you don't treat me as special as I would wish you to treat me. So instead of comparing to other people, just say, you know what, baseline, I don't feel like you treat me in a special way. And when I see you treat other people, it just reminds me of the fact that I don't feel special in your mind. I don't feel special in your heart. Because if you have that statement of like, you treat Taylor as well as you treat me, well, Derek is likely to say, that's ridiculous. I barely know Taylor. I feel like, Katie, I've treated you really well. I feel like Taylor and I have had limited interactions. To say that I treat Taylor the same way I treat you doesn't make any sense. So that's a debatable accusation. It is not debatable to say from the heart, I don't feel like you treat me in a special way. It feels like you don't think of me as a special person. And I don't feel very loved. I feel rejected often. You can't really debate that. Derek can't say, well, let's debate that. You can't debate that. That's differentiation. Differentiation is the ability to know your feelings, own them, and communicate them in a confident manner. Now, we can only be differentiated if we're treated in a way that allows us to trust other people with that vulnerability. If we don't trust other people, then we tend to triangulate, and that's what Katie's doing. She's triangulating the other women. Instead of just speaking directly to Derek and saying, this is how I feel in relation to you. I frequently feel rejected. And it was just exemplified by the fact that I saw you treating other women nicely. But it really has nothing to do with the other women and you. It has to do with my feelings about what's happening in this relationship. But because she doesn't really trust that situation, because her differentiation level is dipping, alcohol, whatever, maybe it's reminding her of her childhood divorce that she observed, or rejection that she felt, maybe the non-custodial parent she felt abandoned by, who knows. Maybe there was even infidelity in the home. Often it can feel like infidelity when your divorced parents actually start to date other people or get married to other people. It feels like infidelity to a lot of kids. I don't know about Katie's situation, but anyway, it's triggering something for her. And she is triangulating these other elements. But then Katie ends that triangulation, which seemed to be going over somewhat well with Derek. He's listening. He's like, okay. But then she says, you never initiate. So this is another thing. So if there's one thing you remember from me, it's show that you're listening and validate before you get defensive or before you make your points, or never make your points, because you can solve a lot of conflicts just by demonstrating your listening and by validating. All your life's conflicts with anyone could probably end just by doing that. You don't even have to bring up your points sometimes. But anyway, if there's a secondary thing that you learned from me, is to never use never, or always never say always. Just avoid statements like always and never. I hear this all the time in sessions with clients. You never initiate. You never are nice to me. You always criticize me. You're always defensive. You never listen to me. These statements cannot be possibly true. It would be such a weird situation if Derek never initiated in the span of their relationship. Plus, what is initiation, right? It could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. If you tell someone you never initiate, they are likely to immediately call to mind moments when they did initiate. And now where are you? Now you're in a situation where, as in Derek's shoes, where you kind of have to defend yourself. Now, again, the smart move, if you are trying to actually soothe the situation, is for Derek to listen to that. Okay, honey, I hear that you're saying that I never initiate. I feel like I initiate sometimes, but I hear you saying that you wish I would initiate more. I get that. It makes sense you would wish I would do that more, because if I initiated more, you would feel like I really want to be with you. What I'm hearing is that I don't do that enough and that you feel rejected. I get that. So you hear when I said that, at no point did I agree with what Katie was saying. At no point did I fall on a sword and say, I'm terribly sorry, I'm an awful person. You don't have to agree with your partner to 100% validate them. You can even sprinkle in your defensiveness, as I did. You heard me say, I don't know if I agree with that, because I can call to mind moments where I initiated, but I get that I don't do it enough. And I get that there are times when you really feel like you would like me to do that more, because it would indicate that I really want to be with you. And I get that I might be giving the impression that I really don't want to be with you very much. And when I was talking to Taylor, I get that it exemplified the fact that you don't feel special in my eyes. Now, what Derek might follow with at some point, maybe not in this escalated moment, is I don't know if I do see you differently than other women, because I haven't fallen in love with you yet. I like you and I like hanging out with you, but I don't feel that spark. And I'm sorry about that. And I can't imagine how horrible that would feel for you. Derek has said things like that before. I don't know if this is the moment for that. So anyway, let's rewind and watch what Katie does there. In the beginning, she's triangulating the other people, but basically saying that she feels hurt. Derek seems like he's on board with that. And then she says, you never initiate. Now, I don't know what Derek is about to do, but I'm guessing he's going to get real defensive about that.
From the way you treat every other girl here. So do I feel special as your wife? No. Not at all.
Okay.
You don't make any initiative. Like physically, when I see you.
You're on a period for the past 6 days.
So right there, we got it. He was on board when she was saying, I don't feel like you treat me in a special way. He's like, okay. And I'm guessing he's thinking, well, yeah, because I haven't fallen in love with you. I could see how that would be. I think that's just endemic to our situation. Until I fall in love with you, you're just not going to feel special in my eyes. I think that's what he's thinking. And then she says, you never initiate. And immediately you could see the gears turning in his head of, well, the reason why I didn't initiate is because you've been on your period for the past 6 days. So now you're in a position where the two of you are now trying to argue about the details of whether or not he initiates or not, and that's not a good place to be. You don't want to be in a place where you're arguing about the details, and couples almost always end up in this place. And the way you can avoid it, one of the ways you can avoid it is to not say you always do this or you never do that. If you say something like that, the other person inevitably is going to argue with that. And then now you're trying to prove that, no, you never initiate. Well, the reason why I don't initiate is because of this. You never, I initiated that other time and you said, you said no to me or something. So now you're in a zone where you're just trying to win an argument, and that's like not going to help. What I hope Katie returns to right now is, okay, well, never mind about initiating. I would like you to initiate more. I want to feel special. And I feel very hurt often by the fact that I don't feel special. Then Derek can hear that, validate it, and maybe Derek just says, well, maybe this relationship isn't going to work, or maybe I need to increase my behaviors about making you feel special. So let's see how this goes. I don't think it's going to go well. Let's rewind that again.
The way you talk to me and treat me is not any different from the way you treat every other girl here. So do I feel special as your wife? No, not at all.
Okay.
You don't make any initiative, like physically. When I see
You're on
you.
a period for the past 6 days.
Married people have sex on their period, Derek, so that's really not an excuse.
Okay.
And that's
okay,
like,
well,
that's
I'm not
like,
sorry I'm trying to initiate sex when you're on a period. The last time I tried making a move, you said no.
I'm done.
I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so this is their pattern, is that when she gets upset, she, I think, pretty well is communicating on a scale of things. She's not being too abusive, or she's not being too aggressive, I'll say. And he's listening. They're usually pretty good about that. But then lately, what happens is Katie kind of crosses this line, and then she runs. And then he chases. Sometimes she is receptive, sometimes she's not. But anyway, you saw what happened right there. She says, you never initiate. And then immediately his gear starts to turn, and he starts to say, oh, wait, this is why I haven't initiated. And then she's like, well, people have sex on their periods, which, is debatable. So, some people have sex on periods, some people don't. It's just a preference thing. Many people do, many people don't. So it's fine if Derek doesn't want to have sex on period. It's fine if Katie does, and vice versa. We don't want to, stigmatize either one of those positions. It's fine. There's preferences. But anyway, the point is that Derek says, well, I did initiate before your period, and you shot me down. And he's angry about it because he's being accused of never initiating. One, so he's upset about that. And two, it sounds like he's hurt that he was shot down. So I've seen a lot of couples get into this kind of fight where they both want the other person to initiate, because that'd be great. You wouldn't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to put yourself out there, right? Because especially when you're in a situation where you don't feel very secure in the relationship, the less security, the more you start to recede and the more you start to put up walls about initiating. And it's one of the vicious cycles that happens in couples that I see all the time. Usually I see them after 10 years of being in the vicious cycle. I don't usually see the beginning of the vicious cycle. And then we have to walk back and repair all that damage. But the point is that there's this there's, you don't feel very secure in the relationship, so you're a little bit more tentative. You don't want to put yourself out there, and you stop initiating. But then eventually you're like, well, I should initiate, or you feel particularly close, and then you initiate, and then there's a rejection for one reason or another. There's lots of reasons why someone doesn't want to have sex in the moment, and then it hurts even more because it took so much effort to initiate, and now you're really hurt, and then it's just like, well, I'm never going to initiate, and now you have both people never initiating, and things spiral downward from there. But anyway, so this is pretty concerning. So she's now walking off for the second time. I'm guessing she is highly upset, and this is that upward spiral. Now she's probably at a 9, and he's seemingly at a 7 or something. So unless one of them gets differentiated, unless one of them calms down and figures out the difference between their emotional reactivity and their ability to think straight, unless one of them does that, unless one of them figures out the difference between, okay, here are my feelings and here are their feelings, and they're different feelings, and both of us have a different point of view, and unless one person can differentiate between the two and differentiate between the different guidance systems of emotions and thinking, then this is going to become more fused, more undifferentiated, more conflictual, more difficult. They've done well in the past, and I am pulling for this couple. Mainly, I'm just pulling for Derek to fall in love with her, because I think if he does, then that will really set things straight. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.